What if your anxiety isn't a flaw but a skill your brain learned too well? Think about it. You weren't born overthinking. You weren't born scanning for danger in calm moments. Your brain picked this up somewhere. At some point, being alert helped you. Being tense kept you prepared. Being anxious meant you didn't miss what mattered. Your mind learned that staying on edge was useful, so it remembered. Now, even when life is quiet, your brain stays awake, watching, anticipating, protecting. Not because something is wrong, but because something once was. Anxiety is often your nervous system saying, "This worked before, let's do it again." The problem is your brain doesn't know that the situation has changed. It doesn't know that you're safer now, that you don't need the same level of defense. That rest is allowed, so the response repeats. Thoughts speed up, your body tightens, and you wonder why peace feels unfamiliar. But here's the shift most people never make. They try to get rid of anxiety instead of understanding what it learned. They fight it, judge it, push it away. And the brain learns one more lesson: stay alert even longer. This audiobook isn't about forcing calm. It's about listening differently, about recognizing the skill your brain developed and gently teaching it a new one. If this resonates like this video, subscribe for deeper inner clarity and share it with someone who feels stuck in their thoughts. You're not broken. Your brain just hasn't been told it can finally rest. Chapter 1. The training you didn't know you were doing. Your anxiety isn't proof that you're broken. It's proof that your brain is good at learning. Somewhere along the way, your mind got trained to treat ordinary life like an emergency. Not because you wanted it, not because you chose it, but because your brain did what it always does. It adapted to what it experienced, repeated what kept you safe, and strengthened the pathways that got used the most. That's the real reason anxiety feels so stubborn. It isn't a random glitch. It's a skill you accidentally practiced until it became automatic. Picture a smoke alarm in a kitchen. It's designed to protect you. But if it's overly sensitive, it screams every time you toast bread. The sound isn't the problem. The sensitivity is. And the reason it's sensitive isn't because it hates you. It's because at some point it learned that reacting fast mattered more than reacting accurately. Now imagine living with that alarm in your chest. You wake up to it. You work beside it. You eat dinner with it. You try to rest while it blares in the background. And after a while, you start organizing your life around not setting it off. You stop cooking meals that might smoke. You open windows you don't need. You tiptoe around your own thoughts. You become the caretaker of your own anxiety, not because you enjoy it, but because you're exhausted and you just want peace. But the peace you're chasing isn't real peace. It's temporary relief. And temporary relief is the fuel anxiety runs on. Let me tell you a story. There was a man who used to drive the same route every day to work. Same streets, same stoplights, same parking lot. One morning on the freeway, he almost got hit by a car that swerved into his lane. It was close enough that his hands shook on the steering wheel for the rest of the ride. His heart pounded like he'd run a marathon. He got to work and acted normal, but inside he was still bracing. That night he replayed it in his mind on loop. The next morning he took a different route. It added 15 minutes, but he felt safer. The morning after that he took the safer route again. And again. A month later, the thought of the freeway made him tense. 2 months later, he started leaving early so he could avoid traffic. 3 months later, he caught himself checking the weather even though he wasn't driving in snow. 6 months later, he was planning his entire day around not driving the freeway. The danger wasn't happening anymore. The body wasn't responding to reality. The body was responding to the memory of danger. That's the part most people don't understand. Your brain doesn't only learn from what happens, it learns from what almost happened. It learns from what might happen. It learns from what you fear could happen, especially when you treat those fears like facts. Anxiety is your brain's prediction machine misfiring. It sees patterns, it looks for threats. It prepares you for outcomes. That's not a flaw, that's survival. But if your brain learned that the world is unpredictable, that people are unsafe, that failure is catastrophic, that your emotions are dangerous, then it will do what it thinks is heroic. It will stay on guard. It will scan. It will warn. It will interrupt your calm with a rush of adrenaline like a bodyguard that never clocks out. That bodyguard isn't evil, it's loyal, it's just working off outdated instructions. This is where the training begins. Most anxiety starts with something that made sense in the moment: a critical parent, a chaotic household, a betrayal, a medical scare, an embarrassing moment in front of people, a period of intense pressure, a time when you were judged, punished, or abandoned. Something taught your nervous system a lesson: stay ready. And because you stayed ready, you avoided pain. Avoidance is powerful. It works instantly. If you don't speak up, you can't be rejected. If you don't try, you can't fail. If you don't go, you can't be uncomfortable. If you don't feel, you can't break. Your brain marks that down as success. Relief becomes the reward. And when relief becomes the reward, your brain will chase it again and again. That's conditioning. That's learning. That's training. So anxiety doesn't grow because you're weak. It grows because you keep feeding it the one thing it loves, the proof that avoidance works. Here's how it plays out in real life. You get a strange sensation in your chest. Your brain asks, what if it's serious? You search it online. For 5 minutes you feel better because you found a harmless explanation. Your brain learns. Searching reduces danger. Next time it sends you the same signal sooner and louder, so you'll search again. You feel awkward at a party. Your brain says you're failing socially. You leave early. The pressure drops. Your brain learns leaving equals safety. Next time it activates the discomfort earlier to push you out faster. You get a big opportunity at work. Your brain says, what if you mess this up? You procrastinate. The tension drops because you're not facing it yet. Your brain learns delaying equals safety. Next time it increases the fear, so you delay again. This is how the brain trains itself into anxiety. Not through one dramatic moment, but through thousands of tiny lessons reinforced by relief. And here's the hard truth. Anxiety is not just something that happens to you. It is something your brain does for you. It is a strategy, a protective habit, a reflex. Once you understand that, you stop treating anxiety like a monster and start treating it like a restrained system, because restrained systems can be retrained. The key is this: your brain learns through repetition and emotion. The more emotionally charged an experience, the stronger the lesson. And your nervous system has been practicing fear with a lot of emotion, which means it learned fast. But the same mechanism that built anxiety can build calm. Not overnight, not with magic, with training. Let's make this practical right now. The first step is to separate sensation from story. Anxiety always comes with 2 layers: the body sensation and the meaning you attach to it. The racing heart is sensation. The thought "I'm about to die" is story. The shaky hands are sensation. The thought "everyone can tell I'm weak" is story. The tight throat is sensation. The thought "I'm going to embarrass myself" is story. Your brain doesn't get anxious because of the sensation. It gets anxious because of the story. So when anxiety hits, you don't need to win a fight with the sensation. You need to stop feeding the story. A woman once described anxiety like a wave that she kept trying to outrun. She would feel it coming and immediately sprint mentally. She'd bargain with it, analyze it, explain it, fix it, escape it. But the wave always caught her because she was still in the ocean. Then one day she learned something simple. She stopped running, she stood still, and she let the wave hit her. It was uncomfortable, but it passed. The next wave passed too, and for the first time she realized the wave wasn't there to drown her. It was there to move through her. That's the shift. You don't stop anxiety by outrunning it. You stop it by proving you can survive it. Your brain needs evidence, not reassurance, not logic debates, evidence. It needs to see you stay, because the training that created anxiety was the training of escape. So your retraining begins with doing the opposite, staying with discomfort without trying to make it disappear. This doesn't mean you enjoy it. It means you're disciplined enough to let your body do what bodies do without treating it like a catastrophe. Think of a toddler learning to walk. They fall, they wobble, they panic a little, but they keep trying. If they avoided walking every time they fell, they'd never learn. Anxiety is your wobble. It's your nervous system learning a new way to move through life. It feels unstable at first because you've been holding onto the wall of avoidance for years. Now listen carefully. Your brain will not stop sending alarm signals just because you've decided you're done. It will test you. It will say, "Are we really safe? Are you sure? What about this? What about that?" It's like a dog that barks at every noise because it believes it's protecting the house. If you yell at the dog, it barks more. If you reassure it, it still barks. But if you calmly show it over time that the noise is not a threat, it learns. That's the relationship you want with your anxiety. Calm authority, not panic, not pleading, not hatred. Calm authority. So here's a method you can start today. It's simple, but don't confuse simple with easy. When anxiety rises, name the sensation, then name the story, then choose your action. You say, "My chest is tight. My brain is telling me something is wrong. I'm going to keep doing what matters anyway." You say, "My stomach is flipping. My brain is predicting humiliation. I'm going to stay in this conversation anyway." You say, "My heart is racing. My brain is shouting danger. I'm going to walk forward anyway." You don't do it to prove a point. You do it to teach your nervous system a lesson. Discomfort is not danger. That one lesson changes everything, because your brain can handle discomfort. It can't handle the belief that discomfort means you're unsafe. This is why some people feel anxious even when life is fine. Because anxiety isn't about what's happening. It's about what the brain expects. And your brain expects what it has rehearsed. Which brings us to the next part of the training you didn't know you were doing: mental rehearsal. You replay scenarios, you anticipate problems, you run future conversations in your head, you pre-feel the pain of rejection, you pre-feel the shame of failure, you pre-feel the disaster of losing control. And each time you do that, you are teaching your brain, this matters, this is urgent, prepare. It feels like planning, but it's not planning, it's conditioning. Planning has an endpoint. Rumination doesn't. Planning leads to action. Rumination leads to more rumination. Planning makes you feel clearer. Rumination makes you feel trapped. So the habit you want is not stop thinking. That's impossible. The habit is redirecting thinking into action. If your brain says, "What if this goes wrong?" you respond with, "Then I'll handle it when it happens. Right now I'm here." If your brain says, "What if you embarrass yourself?" you respond with, "Then I'll recover like an adult. Right now I'm going." If your brain says, "What if you feel anxious?" you respond with, then I'll feel anxious and keep moving. That's not fake confidence. That's real courage. Courage doesn't come from certainty. It comes from commitment. And commitment is the language your brain understands. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. Now we take it deeper. There is a reason anxiety loves speed. Speed feels like control. When you rush, you feel like you're managing the threat. When you scroll, when you check, when you fix, when you ask for reassurance, you feel like you're doing something. That something becomes the ritual. And rituals are powerful, but for the wrong reason. A ritual tells your brain the fear was valid. Because why would you need a ritual if there wasn't danger? So every time you check your phone to make sure no one is mad at you, you reinforce the belief that people being mad is dangerous. Every time you reread a message 10 times before sending it, you reinforce the belief that mistakes are dangerous. Every time you seek reassurance, you reinforce the belief that uncertainty is dangerous. The brain learns, without the ritual, you're not safe. This is why anxiety grows. It's not the fear, it's the response to fear. The most disciplined thing you can do is interrupt the ritual, not with force, with patience and repetition. For example, if you normally check your symptoms online, delay it by 10 minutes. If you normally ask someone if they're upset, delay it by 10 minutes. If you normally redo a task obsessively, do it once and stop. At first, your body will protest. Your brain will scream. That scream is not a sign you're doing it wrong. It's a sign you're finally changing the training. Every new behavior creates new evidence, and evidence rewires the system. You need to understand something else. Anxiety has a purpose. It tries to keep your identity intact. If you secretly believe, I must not fail, then anxiety will try to keep you from trying. If you secretly believe, I must be liked, anxiety will try to keep you from being honest. If you secretly believe, I must control everything, anxiety will try to keep you from letting life be life. So anxiety isn't only fear of danger. It's fear of becoming someone you don't think you can survive being. The person who fails, the person who is rejected, the person who looks foolish, the person who loses control, the person who is disappointed. That's why it feels personal, because it's protecting an image of you. But you're not an image, you're a living human, and humans are built to adapt. The real problem is not that you feel anxiety. The real problem is that you've been treating anxiety as a command. Anxiety says, don't go. You obey. Anxiety says, fix it right now. You obey. Anxiety says, avoid that. You obey. And every time you obey, you teach it to speak louder. The way out is to stop negotiating with it. You acknowledge it. You allow it. You act anyway. That's the formula. It's not dramatic, it's disciplined. A firefighter doesn't wait for fear to disappear before entering a building. They feel the fear and follow the protocol. You need your own protocol. Something you do the same way every time anxiety shows up, so you stop improvising in panic. Here's a simple protocol. First, slow your breathing enough to stop feeding adrenaline. Not to relax, but to stabilize. You don't need a perfect technique. You just need your exhale to be longer than your inhale for a minute or two. Second, label the moment. This is anxiety training. Not this is danger, not this is me failing, but this is training. Third, choose your next right action. Not the whole plan, the next right action. One step, one sentence, 1 minute. You do that repeatedly and your brain will begin to update its predictions because your brain predicts based on outcomes. If you keep surviving the moments you used to avoid, your brain learns they are survivable. The alarm grows quieter, not because you silenced it, because you proved it didn't need to scream. That's your first victory, realizing your anxiety is learned. And if it's learned, it can be unlearned. But only through new practice. So as this chapter closes, let this land in you like a new commandment. You were not born anxious. You were trained into it, and you can train your way out. What are the moments you automatically escape, even when nothing is truly threatening you? What rituals do you perform to get quick relief, and how might those rituals be teaching your brain the wrong lesson? If you stopped treating anxiety like an emergency and started treating it like training, what would you do differently the next time your body sounded the alarm? Chapter 2. The relief trap that keeps you stuck. Last chapter, you learned something that should change the way you talk to yourself forever. Your anxiety isn't a mystery, it's a learned pattern. You saw how your brain connected discomfort to danger and turned avoidance into a habit that felt like protection. And you started separating sensation from story so you could stop treating every internal alarm like a life or death command. Now we go to the engine underneath it all. Because anxiety doesn't survive on fear alone. It survives on what happens after fear. It survives on the moment you escape. There's a reason anxiety feels like it's always one step ahead of you. It's because it's not just a feeling, it's a loop. And the loop is addictive in the most sneaky way possible because the high isn't pleasure. The high is relief. Relief feels like peace, but it's not peace. It's the absence of pressure. And if your brain learns that the only way to remove pressure is to avoid, then anxiety becomes the price of entry for your daily life. Here's the loop in plain language. A trigger hits, your body reacts, your mind tells a scary story, and then you do something to get rid of the discomfort fast. That something might look responsible, even smart, even necessary. But the result is always the same. Your nervous system gets a surge of relief and your brain records a lesson. That action saved us. That lesson becomes a command next time. This is why anxiety becomes a lifestyle without you realizing it. You're not choosing anxiety. You're choosing relief over and over. And every time you do, you're unknowingly upgrading anxiety's authority in your life. Think of it like this. Imagine you have an itch on your arm. You scratch it, it feels better instantly. But the more you scratch, the worse it gets. The skin gets raw, sensitive, and even the slightest touch feels unbearable. Now you're scratching not because the itch is huge, but because the scratching created a new itch. That's what relief does to anxiety. You avoid one phone call, and now phone calls feel dangerous. You leave one uncomfortable room, and now rooms feel suffocating. You procrastinate one scary task, and now tasks feel like threats. You ask for reassurance one time, and now uncertainty feels like poison. The loop tightens, the world shrinks, your confidence drains, and your brain, the loyal bodyguard, thinks it's doing a great job. Let me give you a real-world example that has nothing to do with panic attacks, nothing dramatic, just the everyday training that turns people into prisoners. A woman receives a text from a friend. "We need to talk." That's it. 4 words. Her chest tightens, her stomach drops, her brain starts sprinting. What did I do? Are they mad? Is this about something I said? Did I mess up? Is the friendship over? She can't focus. She rereads the message 10 times. She types a reply and deletes it. She opens social media to see if the friend is posting. She scrolls through old conversations searching for clues. She rehearses what she'll say. She writes a long apology in her head for something she hasn't even been accused of. Then she finally sends, "Is everything okay?" The friend responds, "Yes, I just wanted to tell you something exciting. I got the job." Instant relief. Her whole body softens, she breathes again, and her brain quietly stores the memory. The fear was real, but our checking made us safe. Now imagine that happening 100 times. She begins living like someone who must prevent abandonment at all costs. Not because she's weak, but because she's trained. Her brain believes the only way to survive is to scan for danger in tone, timing, and silence. That's the relief trap. It can look like checking, avoiding, researching, over-explaining, perfectionism, people-pleasing, controlling, distracting, numbing, overworking, and even being productive in ways that are really just fear in a suit and tie. And the worst part is how logical it sounds in your head. It's just one more check. It's just one more question. It's just one more delay. It's just one more edit. It's just one more cancellation. But anxiety doesn't count in ones. It counts in patterns. The brain is a prediction machine. It runs on probabilities. And the more often you respond to discomfort with escape, the more likely it becomes that your brain will treat discomfort as dangerous next time. That is not your personality. That is conditioning. So if you want your life back, you need to do something brave and specific. You need to break the link between anxiety and relief. Not by eliminating anxiety, but by changing what you do after anxiety shows up. Because every time anxiety arrives, you have a choice. You can treat it like an alarm that must be obeyed or like a drill that must be completed. The first path makes your world smaller. The second path makes your nervous system stronger. This is where the disciplined approach starts. You don't have to be fearless. You have to be consistent. Let's talk about what consistency looks like in real life. Consistency means when your mind says, "Get rid of this feeling," you pause long enough to respond with authority. "No, I'm going to let it be here." Consistency means you stop chasing certainty as a requirement for action. Most anxious people are not afraid of doing the thing. They're afraid of doing the thing without a guarantee. They want to know it will go perfectly. They want to know nobody will judge them. They want to know the body won't panic. They want to know they won't regret it later. They want a promise, but life doesn't hand out promises. So anxiety turns into a negotiation. I'll do it if I feel ready. I'll do it if I'm calm. I'll do it if I'm sure. I'll do it if I know what happens. And anxiety smiles because it knows the truth. You will never feel fully ready if your brain keeps demanding certainty as the entry fee. The real upgrade is learning to move while uncertain, not recklessly, not blindly, deliberately. Here's a powerful metaphor. Imagine you're driving through heavy fog at night. You can't see the entire road. You can't see the destination. You can barely see beyond your headlights, but you can see enough for the next few meters. So you drive that far and then you see the next few meters and then the next. That's how you build a life beyond anxiety. You don't need perfect clarity. You need enough clarity for the next right action. Anxiety wants you to stop the car until the fog disappears. But the fog doesn't disappear that way. You move through it. Now when you stop feeding anxiety relief, your brain will react. It will escalate. It will throw bigger sensations, louder thoughts, more urgent warnings. This is where most people quit because they misread the escalation. They assume, this is getting worse, so I must be doing it wrong. No, this is what happens when you stop cooperating with an old pattern. The pattern tries harder. It's like a child who always gets candy when they scream in a store. The one day you decide not to give candy, the screaming gets worse at first. That doesn't mean the child is dying. It means the old strategy is being tested. Your nervous system will do the same thing. It will test you, so you need a rule. When anxiety rises, you don't rush to fix it. You widen your capacity to feel it without obeying it. That capacity is built the same way muscles are built, with resistance. Here's a practical exercise that will change you if you do it repeatedly. When you feel the urge to do your anxiety ritual, don't obey immediately. Delay it. Not forever, just delay it. If you want to check your phone, wait 2 minutes. If you want reassurance, wait 2 minutes. If you want to escape the room, wait 2 minutes. If you want to research symptoms, wait 2 minutes. In those 2 minutes, do one thing. Let the discomfort rise and fall while staying in place. You are teaching your brain a new truth. Urges peak and pass. They are not emergencies. At first, those 2 minutes will feel like an hour. Your mind will try to bargain with you. It will say, "This is stupid, just do the ritual and move on." It will say, "What if you're wrong?" It will say, "You're being irresponsible." That's not wisdom speaking. That's the old training trying to survive. And even if you delay for only 2 minutes, something changes. The brain registers that you didn't obey instantly. That is a crack in the loop. And cracks are how prisons collapse. Now take it further. Once you can delay, you begin to replace. You replace relief behaviors with value behaviors. Relief behaviors are what you do to escape discomfort. Value behaviors are what you do to build your life. Relief behavior is avoiding a tough conversation. Value behavior is saying the truth with respect, even while nervous. Relief behavior is procrastinating a task. Value behavior is doing the next step, even imperfectly. Relief behavior is endlessly researching and checking. Value behavior is accepting uncertainty and taking care of what you can control. Relief behavior is people-pleasing to avoid conflict. Value behavior is setting a boundary and letting someone react. Notice the difference. Relief behaviors worship comfort. Value behaviors worship growth. And you don't need to be inspired to choose value. You need discipline. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is to stop asking, "How do I feel?" before you act, and start asking, "What matters?" before you act. Anxiety asks you to build your life around feelings. Discipline asks you to build your life around values. That one swap changes everything, because feelings are weather. They change. Values are direction. They guide. Now, let's talk about the most common trap people fall into when they start changing. They try to get rid of anxiety using these tools. That's still the relief trap wearing a mask. If your goal is to get rid of anxiety, you're still letting anxiety set the terms. You're saying, "I'll live my life when you leave." But anxiety doesn't leave on command. So the real goal is not removal. The goal is trust. Trust in your ability to feel discomfort and still act like the person you respect. Trust in your ability to tolerate uncertainty without collapsing. Trust in your ability to be imperfect and still be worthy. Trust in your ability to be seen and still be safe. That trust is built by doing the thing while anxious, not after anxious. A man who feared public speaking once told me he kept waiting for confidence to arrive. He believed confident people didn't feel fear. Then he watched a professional speaker backstage. The speaker's hands were shaking. His voice was unsteady. He looked tense. But when he walked on stage, he delivered with calm power. Later he admitted, "I'm always nervous. I just don't let it decide." That's the whole game. You don't become unshakable by never shaking. You become unshakable by shaking and moving anyway. So here's your next practice, simple and direct. The next time anxiety shows up, don't negotiate, don't chase relief, don't fix, don't perform rituals. Do the next right action that your values would choose. If your values say health, you eat the meal anyway. If your values say growth, you make the call anyway. If your values say courage, you show up anyway. If your values say honesty, you speak anyway. If your values say freedom, you stay anyway. Your brain will protest. That's fine. Let it protest. Your job is not to silence it. Your job is to lead it. You are the one who decides what your life is built on, not fear, not relief, not old training, your choices. And the more you choose value over relief, the more your nervous system learns the new lesson. Discomfort is survivable and you are in charge. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. So as you walk away from this chapter, let the question sharpen inside you. Where are you paying for short-term relief with long-term freedom? What rituals have you been calling necessary that are actually feeding your anxiety's power? If you stopped chasing certainty and started choosing values, what would your next right action be today, even with the fog still on the road? Chapter 3. Your body is sounding an alarm, not making a statement up to now. You've seen the truth most people miss. Anxiety isn't a personal flaw, it's a learned survival pattern. You've watched how avoidance and reassurance create short-term relief, and how that relief quietly teaches the brain to panic faster next time. Now it's time to take control at the level where anxiety actually lives, not in your philosophy, but in your nervous system. Because anxiety isn't just a thought problem, it's a body state. Your mind can say, "I'm fine," while your body is preparing for impact. Your logic can list 10 reasons you're safe, and your heart will still race as if danger is inches away. This is where people get frustrated and start fighting themselves. They try to think their way out of a physical reaction. They try to bully their body into calm, and the body doesn't respond to bullying. It responds to training. Here's what your body is really doing when anxiety shows up. It's shifting you into a state designed for survival. Muscles tighten, breathing changes, focus narrows, digestion slows, energy surges. This system was built to help you run from predators, fight for your life, or react instantly to threats. The problem is not that your body has this system. The problem is that it's firing when the threat is emotional, imagined, or long gone. Your body is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It's just reacting to outdated information. Think of it like an old map app that keeps recalculating to avoid a road that used to be closed years ago. The app isn't trying to ruin your trip. It's trying to protect you. But it's working with old data, so it keeps sending you in circles. That's what anxiety feels like. Your body keeps rerouting you away from discomfort, away from uncertainty, away from anything that resembles past pain. It's not wise, it's not accurate, but it is consistent. And consistency is what makes it feel like reality. So you need a new relationship with your body. Not a relationship of fear, not a relationship of control, but a relationship of leadership. Leadership begins with one crucial understanding. Sensations are not predictions. A racing heart is not a prophecy. A tight throat is not a verdict. A dizzy head is not a guarantee of collapse. A shaky body is not a sign that you're incapable. These are sensations. They are signals. They are your nervous system pushing energy into your bloodstream to prepare you for action. The body doesn't speak in words. It speaks in sensations. And anxious people have learned to treat those sensations like a judge handing down a sentence. This is why anxiety feels like it takes over. The moment your body changes, your mind interprets it as danger. The interpretation creates more fear. More fear creates more sensations, and the spiral begins. But there's a way out that doesn't require perfect calm. It requires skill. The skill is called allowing the sensations without escalating the meaning. Most people try to calm down by making the sensations stop. That's like trying to stop a thunderstorm by yelling at the sky. You can't force your nervous system into silence. But you can stop feeding it. You stop feeding it by staying grounded in what is true, not what is intense. Let me show you what this looks like. A man is sitting in a meeting when his heart starts pounding. His brain immediately tries to protect him. It says, everyone can see it. You're going to lose control. You're going to embarrass yourself. He shifts in his chair, tries to hide it, tries to breathe right, tries to escape the room in his head. The pounding gets worse because he's treating it like an emergency. His mind and body are now working against each other. Now imagine a different version of that man trained. His heart starts pounding. He notices it. He says internally, calmly, adrenaline, not danger, not panic, just adrenaline. He plants his feet. He relaxes his shoulders an inch. He continues listening. The sensations rise, peak, and begin to fade because he refused to add gasoline to the fire. That is power. Not because he forced calm, but because he refused to surrender to panic. This is the discipline you're building, staying present while your body is loud, and there's a reason this works. Your nervous system needs a clear message. We can feel this and still be safe. Every time you send that message through your behavior, you update the system, not with words, but with evidence. The evidence is you staying. You're not trying to convince your body. You're teaching it. Now here's something that will shift your entire approach. Anxiety is not just fear. Anxiety is energy without direction. Your body gears up to act, but you don't act. You freeze, you avoid, you suppress, you overthink. So the energy has nowhere to go. It turns inward. It becomes pressure. That's why anxious people often feel trapped in their own skin. Their system is mobilized, but their life becomes smaller. It's like revving an engine while the car is in park. Eventually, the whole vehicle shakes. So one of the fastest ways to change your baseline is to give the energy direction. This doesn't mean you have to run a marathon. It means you have to stop living like a statue. Movement is not just fitness. It's a biological signal of resolution. When your body senses danger, movement is part of the completion cycle. In the wild, the animal runs, shakes, and then returns to calm. Humans feel the activation, then sit perfectly still and try to be normal, and the energy stays trapped. So you build a habit. When anxiety activates, you move your body in a controlled way. Walk for 10 minutes. Do slow squats, stretch your back and hips, shake out your hands, take the stairs. Do push-ups against a wall, not as an escape ritual, as a completion signal. You're telling the nervous system, we mobilized and we used the energy. We are not stuck. Now let's address something critical. You may have learned to fear your own body. Many anxious people don't just fear situations. They fear sensations. They fear the feeling of anxiety itself. They fear the heart rate, the breathlessness, the dizziness, the heat, the unreality, the rush. That fear creates a cage. Because now you're not just afraid of life. You're afraid of your internal experience. And the only way out is to stop treating sensations as threats. This is where you build what I call body trust. Body trust is the ability to feel intense sensations without assuming you're in danger. It's the ability to let your nervous system activate without labeling yourself as unsafe. It's the ability to stand in the storm and know it will pass. You build that trust through deliberate practice. Here's a simple practice you can do that retrains the fear of sensations. You intentionally bring on mild, safe sensations that resemble anxiety, and you sit with them calmly. This teaches your brain that sensations aren't the enemy. You spin in a chair for 15 seconds and notice dizziness without panicking. You jog in place for 30 seconds and feel your heart rate rise without catastrophizing. You breathe through your nose and let air hunger show up without forcing it away. Then you stop and you stay. You do fix. You observe. You watch how the sensations peak and pass. This is how you retrain fear at the root. You are teaching your brain the exact opposite of what anxiety taught you, that you can tolerate what you used to avoid. And if you're thinking, why would I bring on those sensations? Here's the answer. Because you've been treating them like a monster in the dark. You've been running from them, which makes them bigger. You turn on the light by meeting them on purpose. The body learns fastest through experience. Now, there is another lesson your brain learned that feeds anxiety every day: urgency. Anxiety loves urgency because urgency collapses your options. It makes you impulsive. It makes you reactive. It makes you reach for relief. It makes you believe you must solve your feelings immediately. But most things that anxiety labels urgent are not urgent. They are uncomfortable, so you need to train a new response. Slow is safe. This is not about moving slowly in life. It's about slowing your internal pace, slowing your breathing, slowing your reaction, slowing your decision. When anxiety hits, do not speed up. Do not rush into fixing. Do not rush into explaining. Do not rush into checking. Choose one slow action that communicates safety. Lengthen your exhale. Lower your shoulders. Unclench your jaw. Soften your hands. Look around the room and name what you see. These small actions don't cure anxiety. They stop you from adding pressure. They stop you from amplifying the state. You are saying, I am not in a real emergency. And when your body hears that consistently, it starts to stand down. Now I want you to understand something that will give you your power back. Your nervous system does not change through one big moment. It changes through small, repeated signals. Your brain is like a courtroom. Every time you avoid, you give anxiety more evidence. Every time you stay, you give courage more evidence. You're building a case. And once the case is strong enough, the verdict changes. This is why people who heal from anxiety don't become superhuman. They become consistent. They stop demanding instant results. They stop checking whether the anxiety is gone. They commit to the training like an athlete commits to practice before the trophy exists. Because the reward isn't a perfect day. The reward is a powerful life. And that life is built by taking your body with you instead of trying to leave it behind. Here's the daily blueprint to start turning your nervous system into an ally. First, start your day with a signal of control. Not control over life, but control over your direction. The first 10 minutes of your day matter because they set the tone. If you start by checking messages, searching for problems, or rushing, you prime your nervous system for urgency. Instead, begin with one calm act that proves you're in charge. Drink water slowly, take a short walk, breathe with long exhales, write one sentence about what matters today. Keep it simple, keep it disciplined. Second, choose one discomfort on purpose each day. One small thing you usually avoid, not to punish yourself, to expand your capacity. You send a message to your brain. We don't run the moment we feel pressure. Third, end your day by closing loops instead of leaving them open. Anxiety loves unfinished business. It loves vague dread. So write down what you handled today and what the next step is tomorrow. Not a masterpiece plan, just a simple next step. Your brain relaxes when it has clarity. That's how you stop living like your nervous system is a wild animal. You stop reacting and start training. If you're listening to this and realizing your anxiety has been running your body like a puppet, I want you to hear me clearly. You can change this, not by fighting the sensations, not by begging for calm, by building evidence through consistent action. You become the kind of person who can feel the alarm and still move. You become the kind of person who stops asking for permission from your nerves. You become the kind of person who doesn't need life to be perfectly safe to live it fully. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. So now, take a breath and let these questions settle into you like a challenge you're finally ready to accept. When your body sounds the alarm, what story do you automatically attach to it? What would change if you treated sensations as energy instead of danger? And if you stopped trying to eliminate anxiety and started training your nervous system to trust you, what would you do the next time the storm rises and you realize you can stay right where you are? Chapter 4. The thoughts that feed anxiety and how to starve them. By now, you've stopped treating anxiety like proof that something is wrong with you, and you've started seeing it as a trained response that can be retrained. You've seen how the relief trap keeps the loop alive, and you've begun building body trust by staying present through sensations instead of obeying them. Now we're going to take back the territory where anxiety quietly sets up its headquarters, your attention, because anxiety isn't only a feeling, it's a focus. It's where your mind goes when you're not watching. It's the default channel your brain flips to when it senses uncertainty. And if you've lived with anxiety long enough, your attention has been trained like a guard dog, always scanning, always sniffing for the next thing that could go wrong, always tense even when nothing is happening. Here's what makes it so exhausting. You don't just feel anxious. You think anxious. You remember anxious. You plan anxious. You interpret anxious. You live inside anxious predictions, and the brain believes what it repeatedly rehearses. If you replay threats all day, your body starts acting like threats are present. If you practice worst-case scenarios like a daily routine, your nervous system starts preparing for the worst as if it's scheduled. This is why two people can live the same day and have completely different inner worlds. One person wakes up, deals with normal stress, and moves forward. Another person wakes up and spends the day in a courtroom inside their head, cross-examining every detail of their life like it's evidence of impending disaster. The problem is that your mind produces scary thoughts. Minds do that. The problem is the relationship you've built with those thoughts. Most anxious people treat thoughts like alerts. They treat them like warnings that must be respected. A thought appears and it instantly becomes an instruction. What if you mess up? What if they leave? What if you get sick? What if you can't handle it? What if you lose control? And the moment that thought appears, your body tenses as if it's already happening. But here's the truth that changes everything. A thought is not a forecast, it's a suggestion. Your brain is a suggestion machine. It throws out possibilities constantly. Most of them are useless. Some are helpful. Anxiety happens when you start treating every suggestion like a threat that must be solved immediately. This is where the training gets sharp. Your job is not to stop anxious thoughts from appearing. Your job is to stop treating them like authority. There's a difference between having a thought and obeying a thought. There's a difference between noticing a story and living inside a story. Imagine your mind as a radio. Anxiety is one station. It's loud. It's dramatic. It repeats the same breaking news headline all day. Something is wrong and you must fix it now. Most people try to shut the radio off. They wrestle with it. They beg it to stop. They argue with the host. And the more they fight, the more attention they give it, and attention is oxygen. Instead of turning the radio off, you learn to lower the volume. You keep living while it plays in the background. That is what freedom actually looks like. Not silence. Leadership. To lead your mind, you need to understand the 3 thought patterns that feed anxiety the most. The first is catastrophizing. This is when your mind treats a small uncertainty like it's the beginning of a full collapse. A delayed reply becomes rejection. A mistake becomes humiliation. A symptom becomes a diagnosis. A tense conversation becomes the end of everything. Catastrophizing doesn't feel like imagination. It feels like realism. It feels like you're being responsible by preparing. But what you're actually doing is practicing panic. The second is mind reading. This is when your brain pretends it has access to other people's hidden thoughts. You assume they're judging you, disappointed in you, tired of you, annoyed by you. You interpret facial expressions, pauses, and punctuation like they're coded messages. And because you can't prove yourself wrong, you stay trapped in the assumption. The third is control addiction. This is the one nobody admits because it sounds like strength. But it's not strength. It's fear dressed up as management. Control addiction is when you believe you must feel in control to be safe. You must predict outcomes, eliminate uncertainty, pre-plan conversations, and prevent discomfort. When control becomes your god, anxiety becomes your priest, constantly demanding more sacrifices. More checking, more planning, more rehearsing, more fixing. And still you never feel done. Now listen carefully. These patterns are not your personality. They are training. They are habits of attention. And habits can change. Here's how. You build a new pause between the thought and your response. Most people live like this. Thought hits, they react. Thought hits, they react. Thought hits, they react. There's no gap. Your freedom begins in the gap. When an anxious thought appears, you don't have to answer it. You don't have to solve it. You don't have to debate it. You can acknowledge it the way you'd acknowledge a passing car. There it goes. You say, my mind is offering a scary story. That one sentence creates space. Because now you're not inside the story, you're holding it. And the moment you can hold it, you can choose what to do next. Here's a story that will make this real. A young woman used to dread sending emails at work. Not because she couldn't write an email, but because her mind turned every message into a trial. She would write one sentence and immediately think, what if this sounds stupid? What if they think I'm incompetent? What if I offend them? What if they ignore me? She would rewrite the email 20 times. She'd check the tone. She'd add smiley language, then remove it, then add it again. She'd delay sending until the last second, then panic and send it while her hands were shaking. From the outside, it looked like perfectionism. From the inside, it was a desperate attempt to control uncertainty. One day she made a rule, 2 drafts maximum, then send. The first time she did it, her body screamed. Her mind predicted disaster. Her fingers hovered over the button like it was a detonator. She sent it anyway. Nothing happened. No humiliation, no firing squad, no collapse, but something important did happen. She experienced the discomfort without performing the full ritual. She survived the uncertainty without buying relief. And that was the first brick laid in a new foundation. Weeks later, her anxiety didn't disappear, but her life expanded. She stopped letting anxious thoughts dictate her behavior. Her mind still offered fear, but she stopped worshiping it. That's what you're building now. Not a mind with no fear, but a mind you can lead. So what do you do when a catastrophic thought shows up? You don't respond with reassurance. Reassurance is still a negotiation, and negotiations keep the thought important. Instead, you respond with grounded realism and self-trust. You say, maybe, and if it happens, I'll handle it. Not because you're pretending it will be fine, but because you're refusing to treat uncertainty like a death sentence. The goal isn't to prove your fear wrong. The goal is to prove your strength right. Now what do you do with mind reading? You return to what you can know. Your brain will try to build a story from scraps. A pause becomes anger. A short reply becomes dislike. A glance becomes judgment. You cut it off with clarity. You say, I don't know what they think. I know what I think. I know what I value. I will act from that. That's a return to authority. And what do you do with control addiction? You start practicing trust over certainty. You remind yourself, I don't need to control everything to be safe. I need to be capable. This is where your identity changes, and this is the deeper level people miss. Anxiety is not only about fear. It's about who you believe you are when fear shows up. If you believe I'm fragile, then anxiety becomes terrifying. If you believe I can't handle discomfort, then anxiety becomes a threat. If you believe I must be perfect, then anxiety becomes a constant judge. But if you start believing I can feel this and move, anxiety loses its power. So you build an identity of capability. You don't do it by repeating slogans. You do it by collecting evidence. Every time you stay in a conversation while your heart races, that's evidence. Every time you send the email without 10 checks, that's evidence. Every time you show up to the event while nervous, that's evidence. Every time you let uncertainty exist without chasing relief, that's evidence. Evidence is what rewires self-belief. And this is how you starve anxious thinking. Not by fighting thoughts, but by refusing to behave like they're true. Because behavior is the final vote. Your thoughts may scream disaster, but if you walk forward anyway, your brain learns that the scream was not a command. Now let's get even more practical. There's one attention habit that keeps anxiety alive more than anything else: mental time travel. Anxiety lives in the future. Regret lives in the past. Peace lives in the present. An anxious mind constantly time travels. It lives 10 steps ahead, trying to prevent pain. And the more it time travels, the more it misses the only place where life is actually happening. So you train your attention like a weapon. You bring it back again and again, not with force, with repetition. You might be washing dishes and suddenly your mind is in a future argument. You notice it and you return to the water on your hands, the sound of the sink, the temperature of the plate. You might be walking and suddenly your mind is rehearsing a disaster at work. You notice it and you return to your feet on the ground, the rhythm of your steps, the air on your face. This is not a cute mindfulness exercise. This is nervous system training. This is telling your body, We are here. We are not in a crisis. And here is the most disciplined part. You do it even when it feels pointless. Because anxiety has trained you to believe you must think to be safe. It's convinced you that if you stop thinking, you'll be blindsided. But thinking is not safety. Thinking is often just spinning. You are allowed to stop rehearsing pain. You are allowed to live without pre-suffering. The person you're becoming doesn't need to preview every disaster to be ready. They trust themselves to respond when reality arrives. And that trust is what anxiety can't survive under. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. So as this chapter settles in, let it challenge the way you've been living inside your own head. What thoughts have you been treating like truth just because they're loud? What fears have you been feeding with attention, rituals, and endless rehearsal? And if you stopped negotiating with anxious stories and started leading your mind back to the present, what would your life look like 1 week from now, 1 month from now, 1 year from now, if you kept choosing capability over control? Chapter 5. Building a life your anxiety can't control. You've already learned to stop calling anxiety a personal failure, and you've started treating it like trained alarm systems and trained attention habits. You've seen how relief rituals keep the loop alive, how your body can scream without being right, and how thoughts can be loud without being true. Now you're ready for the most important shift of all. You're going to stop trying to manage anxiety and start building a life that outgrows it. Because here's the truth nobody wants to admit at first. You don't beat anxiety by winning arguments inside your head. You beat it by changing what your life rewards. Anxiety becomes powerful when it becomes useful, when it becomes the reason you don't have to risk, when it becomes the excuse you can hide behind, when it becomes the responsible voice that keeps you small, safe, and invisible. That's not a moral failure. That's a human survival strategy. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you can't unsee it, you have a choice. You can keep trying to feel ready before you live, or you can start living and let readiness catch up. Most people wait for confidence like it's a gift that arrives someday. But confidence is built the same way calluses are built, friction repeated. You don't get stronger by thinking about lifting weights. You get stronger by lifting weights while your muscles complain. The same is true here. Anxiety fades as a side effect of courage, not as a prerequisite for it. So we're going to talk about courage in a way that's practical, not poetic. Courage is simply doing what matters while your body disagrees. That's it. You don't need to feel brave. You need to behave brave, and behavior creates identity. Right now, whether you realize it or not, you've been building an identity around avoidance, an identity around control, an identity around scanning, an identity around staying ready, an identity around being the person who can't. I can't go because I'll panic. I can't speak because I'll mess up. I can't try because I'll fail. I can't relax because something might happen. But identity isn't a truth carved into stone. Identity is a story built by repetition. Your brain believes who you are based on what you repeatedly do. So if you want a new identity, you need new repetitions. You stop being the anxious person by becoming the person who moves forward even when anxious. And I want you to notice something important. That doesn't mean you become reckless. It doesn't mean you pretend you're fine. It means you become reliable. It means you become the person who can be counted on by your future self. Anxiety hates reliability. Anxiety feeds on hesitation, on delays, on maybe tomorrow, on when I feel ready. So your new power is this: you stop negotiating with tomorrow. You build daily proof. Let me tell you about a man who was stuck for years in the anxiety loop. He wasn't dramatic. He wasn't falling apart. He was functional. And that's the scariest kind of stuck, because you can survive for a long time without realizing you're slowly disappearing. His world had shrunk in quiet ways. He avoided making plans. He avoided travel. He avoided difficult conversations. He avoided opportunities that came with visibility. He didn't call it avoidance. He called it being practical, being selective, being low-key. But then he noticed something that hit him like a punch. His life was built around what he didn't want to feel. And he asked himself a brutal question: if my anxiety had a blueprint for my life, would it look exactly like this? It did. So he changed the question he asked each day. He stopped asking, "How do I feel?" and started asking, "What would a capable person do next?" Not a perfect person, not a fearless person, a capable person. And every day he picked one small action that his anxiety would prefer he avoid. One phone call, one honest message, one small social interaction, one task he'd been delaying, one boundary he needed to set, one moment of staying instead of escaping. At first it was uncomfortable, of course it was, but discomfort wasn't the enemy anymore. Discomfort was the gym. Weeks passed and something changed. Not because the anxiety vanished, but because his identity started to shift. He no longer saw anxiety as a stop sign. He saw it as resistance. And resistance meant he was doing something worth doing. That's the mindset that breaks the cage. Now you might be thinking, but what if my anxiety is constant? What if it's there no matter what I do? Then you train anyway. Because training isn't about the feeling of progress. Training is about building capacity when progress feels invisible. Here's how you build capacity without burning out. You stop trying to conquer your entire life at once and you start running an experiment. You choose one area and you expand it gradually. Not because you're fragile, but because you're strategic. This is the difference between bravery and chaos. If your anxiety is strongest in social situations, you don't start by forcing yourself into a crowded event for 5 hours. You start by staying 5 minutes longer than you want to. You start by making one comment instead of staying silent. You start by holding eye contact for one more second. You start by sending the message without rewriting it 10 times. If your anxiety is strongest with performance and pressure, you don't start by taking on the biggest stage of your life. You start by taking one small risk in your work. You submit the draft before it's perfect. You raise your hand once. You let a mistake exist without punishing yourself. If your anxiety is strongest around health fears and sensations, you don't start by trying to control every symptom. You start by tolerating uncertainty for a little longer before you check. You practice letting the sensations rise and fall without attaching a story. The point is this: you stop building your life around avoiding discomfort and you start building it around expanding your range. Because a bigger life makes anxiety weaker. Not because anxiety is impressed, but because your nervous system learns something new. We can handle more than we thought. This is why anxiety often grows in empty space. When your life has too much room for rumination, anxiety moves in like an unwanted tenant. It fills your mental quiet with what-ifs and warnings. But when your life is built on purpose, anxiety has less territory to occupy. Purpose doesn't mean some grand mission. It means direction. It means you decide what you're building. It means you give your energy a job besides worrying, and that takes discipline. Discipline is the skill of doing what's necessary even when you don't feel like it. Anxiety tries to convince you that feelings should make decisions. Discipline teaches you that feelings can come along for the ride, but they don't get the steering wheel. Now let's get painfully real about one of the biggest reasons anxiety stays strong. You keep making your life too negotiable. You wake up and everything is optional. Work is optional. Movement is optional. Sleep is optional. Boundaries are optional. What you consume is optional. How you respond to stress is optional. Optional lives create anxious minds because the brain never knows what to rely on. Stability is calming. Not the fake stability of controlling everything, but the real stability of having standards. So you build a few non-negotiables. A non-negotiable morning routine that signals leadership. A non-negotiable movement habit that teaches your body completion. A non-negotiable sleep rhythm that stabilizes your nervous system. A non-negotiable time limit on scrolling and doom consumption. A non-negotiable way you respond when anxiety hits. Label, allow, act. These aren't restrictions, they're freedom. Because when you have standards, you stop waking up and asking anxiety for permission to live. You already decided, and there's a deeper layer here. Anxiety often becomes the voice of a life without boundaries. If you say yes to everything, you live in constant pressure. If you avoid conflict, you live in silent resentment. If you let people's moods control you, you live like a puppet. If you never disappoint anyone, you disappoint yourself. And anxiety thrives in that tension. So part of outgrowing anxiety is learning to tolerate being misunderstood, learning to tolerate someone being unhappy with you, learning to tolerate the discomfort of choosing yourself. Because boundaries create calm. A boundary is simply a decision you enforce to protect what matters. And anxiety will argue with boundaries at first, because boundaries remove your ability to use people-pleasing as relief. They remove your ability to avoid friction. They force you to be direct, but here's the payoff. When you become a person with boundaries, you become a person with self-respect. And self-respect is one of the strongest anxiety antidotes in existence. Not because it makes life easy, but because it makes you solid. A solid person can feel anxious and still stand upright. Now, there's one more trap you need to watch for at this stage. Once you start improving, anxiety will change costumes. It will pretend to be wisdom. It will say, "Don't push today, you might relapse." It will say, "Better not risk it, you've made progress." It will say, "You're doing well, don't mess it up." It will say, "Stay comfortable so you can stay stable." That sounds reasonable. It sounds mature. But the question is simple. Does that thought expand your life or shrink it? Because anxiety is not always loud. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it sounds like caution. Sometimes it sounds like self-care. And sometimes it uses those words to keep you trapped. Real self-care strengthens you. Anxiety care shelters you. Real self-care says, "You can handle this and I'll support you." Anxiety care says, "Avoid it and call it healing." So you need a compass, and that compass is values. You don't need a life without fear. You need a life with a direction. When your values are clear, you stop choosing based on comfort. You choose based on meaning, and meaning is what makes suffering tolerable. Meaning is what gives pain a purpose. Meaning is what turns anxiety from a prison into a training ground. If you're building freedom, you accept discomfort. If you're building capability, you accept uncertainty. If you're building self-respect, you accept temporary awkwardness. If you're building a future, you accept the fact that growth doesn't feel like safety at first. This is the final thing you must remember in this chapter. Anxiety will not disappear before you change. It will fade because you changed. So stop waiting for the feeling. Become the person you respect while the feeling is still there. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. So take a moment and let the questions that matter rise to the surface. Where have you been building a life that rewards avoidance and calls it safety? What would change if your identity shifted from "I can't" to "I do it anyway"? And if you chose one daily act of courage, one boundary, one non-negotiable, one value-driven step forward, what kind of life would you be living in 90 days if you refuse to negotiate with the version of you that keeps shrinking? Chapter 6. The new YOUWHO, turn back. You've already done what most people never do. You stopped calling anxiety your identity and started seeing it as learned training that can be replaced with better training. You broke the illusion of relief as peace. You learned to stay with sensations without turning them into a crisis. You stopped treating thoughts as commands, and you began building a life that expands instead of shrinks. Now it's time to lock this in for good, not as an idea, but as a way you live. Because anxiety doesn't disappear just because you understand it. It fades when your behavior stops obeying it. And in the final chapter, we're going to turn everything you've learned into something simple and permanent, a code you live by. Not a fragile plan that works only when you feel good, but a standard that holds even when you feel rough, even when you're tired, even when life gets messy. Especially then. Here's the truth about long-term change. The biggest danger isn't anxiety. The biggest danger is forgetting what you know the moment you get hit with a hard day. A hard day comes and your brain tries to drag you back into old habits. It whispers, "See, you're still anxious, you haven't changed." It tries to turn a moment into a verdict, but you are not the moment. You are the pattern, and patterns are chosen. So from this point forward, your job is not to eliminate anxiety. Your job is to keep your standard no matter what your body says. That's the level you're stepping into now. Let's talk about the comeback trap because it catches almost everyone. You'll have a streak of good days, you'll feel lighter, you'll feel more confident, you'll start thinking, "I'm finally past it." Then one day anxiety flares up, maybe out of nowhere. Your heart races, your mind spins, your old sensations return. And the first thought that hits is dangerous. "I'm back at the beginning." No, you're not. You're at the next level. Because the flare-up isn't proof that nothing changed. It's proof that life is still life. It's proof your nervous system still has the ability to activate. And that's fine. The question isn't whether you feel it. The question is whether you obey it. People who stay stuck treat a flare-up like a disaster. People who grow treat a flare-up like a drill. They say, "This again, okay, I know what to do." Not with frustration, with calm authority. So here's your permanent identity. You're the person who knows what to do when anxiety shows up. That's what stability is. Not constant calm. Skill under pressure. Now I want you to install 3 rules into your life. These are your anchors. When you don't know what to do, you follow these. Rule 1, never make a life decision inside an anxious moment. Anxiety is not the time to quit your job, end a relationship, cancel a plan, send a long emotional message, or label yourself as hopeless. Anxiety narrows your thinking and pushes urgency. It makes everything feel bigger than it is. So you practice delay with leadership. You say, "Not now. I will revisit this when my nervous system is calmer." This one rule alone will save your life from thousands of impulsive choices driven by fear. Rule 2. Always return to the next right action. Anxiety wants you to solve the entire future. It wants you to figure out everything now. It wants you to fast forward to the ending and guarantee the outcome. But you don't live the entire future at once. You live one step at a time. So when anxiety rises, you ask yourself, what is the next right action? Not the perfect action, not the action that guarantees success. The next right action, one breath, one sentence, one email, one boundary, 1 minute of staying. The next right action is how you build trust in yourself. Rule 3. Measure progress by behavior, not by sensation. This is where people get tricked. They think progress means feeling calm, so they feel anxious and assume they failed. But progress isn't calm. Progress is action. Progress is showing up while anxious. Progress is speaking while nervous. Progress is sending the message without checking 10 times. Progress is letting the thought be loud without bowing to it. Progress is staying 5 minutes longer. Progress is choosing value over relief. If your behavior is stronger, you are stronger, even if your body is loud. Now, those rules are your foundation. But you also need a map for the bigger picture, because anxiety doesn't just show up in moments. It shows up in seasons. It shows up when life changes, when uncertainty increases, when pressure builds, when you're stepping into something new. So here's the map. There are 3 stages you'll move through as you outgrow anxiety. The first stage is the awakening. This is when you realize this is learned, this is a loop, this is training. That's where you started. It's the moment you stop blaming yourself and start seeing the system. The second stage is the resistance. This is when you start changing behavior and anxiety fights back. It gets louder. It tests you. It tries to pull you back into rituals and avoidance. This stage is uncomfortable, and it's where most people quit because they want proof too early. But you didn't come this far to retreat at the first test. This stage is where you earn your freedom. The third stage is the integration. This is when courage becomes normal. This is when you stop making anxiety the main character of your life. It still shows up sometimes, but it no longer runs the story. It becomes background noise while you move forward. And here's the part people don't expect. When you reach integration, you don't feel like a completely different person. You feel like yourself again. The real you. The one who was always there underneath the scanning and the rehearsing and the controlling. The one who can breathe without asking permission. Now let's make this personal. There's a specific kind of grief that comes with healing from anxiety. It's the grief of realizing how long you lived under its rules, how many opportunities you avoided, how many honest moments you delayed, how many times you chose relief instead of freedom. That grief is real, and it can be heavy, but don't let it turn into a new cage. Grief is not a verdict. It's a signal that you're awake now. And being awake means you have the power to build differently from here. So if you feel sadness about the past, let it sharpen your commitment, not soften it. Because the next chapter of your life is built by what you do next, not what you regret before. Now let's talk about the part that seals all of this, discomfort as a compass. You spent years treating discomfort like a stop sign, but the new you treats discomfort like a direction, because discomfort often shows up when you're expanding. It shows up when you're telling the truth. It shows up when you're risking rejection. It shows up when you're learning something new. It shows up when you're stepping into responsibility. It shows up when you're becoming visible. It shows up when you're outgrowing your old self. So instead of thinking, this feels bad, I must stop, you start thinking, this feels hard, which means I'm growing. Not every discomfort is good, but the discomfort of growth has a specific flavor. It's fear mixed with possibility. It's tension mixed with meaning. It's the feeling of your life getting bigger. And the new you doesn't run from that. The new you knows that the cost of growth is temporary discomfort, and the cost of avoiding growth is a permanent small life. Now, here's what I want you to commit to as this audiobook ends. Not a huge promise you'll forget. A simple oath you can keep. You will stop living by the rules of relief. You will stop treating anxiety as a command. You will stop negotiating with fear like it's a boss. You will treat anxiety like an alarm, not a statement. You will treat thoughts like suggestions, not laws. You will treat discomfort like training, not danger. And you will build your life around values, not around moods. That is the line you cross when you stop being anxious and start being powerful. Power doesn't mean you never struggle. Power means you don't turn back when you struggle. Now imagine your future self 6 months from now. They still feel nerves sometimes because they're human, but they don't spiral the same way. They don't chase certainty the same way. They don't check, avoid, and apologize for existing. They show up, they speak, they finish what they start. They set boundaries without guilt. They let discomfort exist without worshiping it. They move through the fog one step at a time because they trust their ability to drive. That future self is not a fantasy. That future self is built by the next decision you make after you finish listening, because this is where motivation becomes a lifestyle. It's easy to feel inspired. It's harder to be disciplined. But discipline is where your freedom is hiding. And discipline doesn't require you to feel good. It requires you to be committed, committed to the next right action, committed to behavior over sensation, committed to values over relief. So the next time anxiety shows up, don't treat it like proof you're failing. Treat it like the moment you get to practice the person you're becoming. The person you're becoming doesn't ask, "How do I get rid of this?" They ask, "How do I move forward with this here?" And then they move. They don't wait for permission. They don't wait for calm. They don't wait for certainty. They don't wait for the world to be perfectly safe. They become safe in themselves. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. And now, as you step out of this final chapter and back into your real life, I want you to carry these questions with you like a quiet fire in your chest. When anxiety rises again, will you treat it as a command or as a drill you already know how to complete? Will you measure your progress by how you feel in the moment or by what you choose to do in the middle of that feeling? What is the next right action you've been delaying because you wanted certainty first? And what kind of person will you become the day you do it anyway?